So, hello everyone. Welcome to another session of the Bondex live stream. I'm Ignacio Palomera, CEO of co-founder of the company, and we're here with Mike Mumola, LinkedIn sensation, life coach, and lawyer. And Mike, before I let you introduce yourself, let me first say that I've been a Tony Robbins fan, I've been a Tim Ferriss fan, but then there's a lot of guys that come after that I simply don't see why I should be listening to them. But you were a lawyer for 20 years before you went into, kind of actually talking about business, actually, making this positive impact. And I respect that a lot because that means you're a technocrat and you actually have a craft that you've, kind of perfected for 20 years before you went out into that. And with that, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate that. What a great intro. It was all of that. It was it was the 20 years of doing that brought me to this place. It's that whole hero's journey, Joseph Campbell. And so for me, basically, I can make it very short and sweet. I grew up poor. I didn't have much. And for me, money was the way out. That was the security. And so I learned early on how to make it and fended for myself and my mother and my sister. And so that ultimately, that entrepreneurial spirit inside of me, combined with the genuine interest in helping people, just guided me with the universe's help to law school and put myself through law school. Came out. My first real entrepreneurial endeavor was I opened a law firm just about 20 years ago and built that out very, very successful. And I had some great opportunities along the way to do business with some incredible human beings. And so I started doing that. But then literally about 7 years ago, I was sitting around. We built our dream house, my wife and I, and one of the most beautiful homes I've ever seen, still to this day. And I was laying on the couch and I was looking up at the 24-foot ceilings, and I said, "I'm not happy. Like something's missing." And dream house, beach houses, boats, cars, all the toys you can imagine, plenty of money in the bank, investments. I'm like, how is this possible? This doesn't make sense. And so I literally stopped in my tracks and decided to go explore everything I'd never learned. And I wanted to understand all of the things that I had never given the time to try and understand, and started turning over those stones to learn those things, because I had done what everybody told me would make me quote unquote successful, have a lot of money and life will be great kind of thing. But then when I got to that point, things were financially, everything was fine, but there was not this sense of living a fulfilled and purposeful life. And so I wanted to go back. And so I started doing all of the things that I had never been taught. And a lot of that, brought me into crypto and tech and psychedelics and a lot of different things that people had never exposed me to, and started learning about those things, incorporating them into my life, making them a part of the journey, bringing in more people at a very high level to kind of just march forward and help others improve the quality of their life. So that's a lot of info in a little bit of time, kind of a fire hose approach, but I hope you got it all.
No, I love it, Mike. And we're aligned in a lot of things, from the psychedelics to the crypto to everything else that you've actually discussed. So that's incredible. And I love that you basically had your hero's journey, but then you were like, what next? I need that fulfillment, the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Once you've met all your needs, right, the basic needs, there's that need for fulfillment that no one knows where it comes from. And a lot of the times, I think once you're in a position like you, when you've reached a certain level of success, it starts to be about giving back. And for you, about giving back and exploring other fields beyond law and into technology, psychedelics, and those other fields that I have actually experienced in myself. And with that said, I have to then ask you something. Believe it or not, this live stream is a bit of a trap because I want to convert you to a Web 3.0 LinkedIn. Now, I understand that you yourself sort of became an influencer of sorts, or a spokesman on LinkedIn, and that was your first channel or your first platform that got you started as more of a public figure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me a bit about your experience there. What do you like about LinkedIn? How come you started there? What have you found about the platform? Tell me a little bit about
Well,
that.
I started there really in the sense that you're talking about, because the other platforms they're very social in nature, right? So if you look at Instagrams, and before that's Facebook and now TikTok, those are social media platforms. They're a little different though. They're more quote, they put the social in social media. This, with LinkedIn, was more of a professional / social media platform. So it gave me the opportunity to showcase what I've done as a professional, but also in a way to help people understand what else was important to me. So I knew that it had the right people, it had the right audience for me based on what I wanted to do, because that's a big part of who I've become. When I go out and speak publicly, when I coach, when I mentor, when I do these things, it's typically with people who are on LinkedIn because they want to improve the quality of their life through their profession, but also looking at other ways through the social network experience to do that.
That's a great answer. That makes complete sense. With that said, I don't know if you've heard about Bondex or you've looked into us a little bit. Have
No,
you?
no,
Okay, well, you're a crypto fan, right? You're a supporter of NFTs and you're liking what the tech is bringing, the democratization that
love
is
it.
bringing to the users, don't you?
I love it.
Well, LinkedIn remains a pretty centralized Web 2.0 network alternative, correct?
Tell me more, man. I'm all about decentralization.
Well, we are the LinkedIn killer, and that's what we aim to be. And the way that we're doing it is we're cutting the user into the economic equation, right? The reason that LinkedIn is free, Google is free, Facebook is free is because at the end of the day, you are the product, your data is the product, right? So we are using decentralized technology and a distributed business model through a Bondex token to give the user a revenue share in the network. So now you have the investors, the managers, and the users all kind of have their incentives aligned to this like revenue sharing token essentially. So it's using tokenomics to make a business better, like a business model better. And
Interesting.
that's what
I
Bondex
like
is
it.
about. Yeah, so we released our mobile application app in August, and in 3 months we've reached 250,000 users, all through network effects and blockchain rewards. And the idea is
Fantastic.
that our platform is gamified, and for updating your skills, taking technical assessments that validate the skills that you claim that you have, et cetera, your rating goes up, and therefore you receive more and more tokens. So what you end up is a professional network with a much more engaged user base, which in turn should lead for the
Translates.
users to be able to network better, access opportunities better, but also it'll make the demand side, the employers, be able to find their talent better because they're going to have fresher data, better data, and a more engaged user base.
Got it. I love it. I'll take a look at it.
You'll have to take a look at it. But yeah, that's basically us in a nutshell. Do you have any other questions regarding how we work, how that would work versus a normal traditional LinkedIn,
No,
how
I
you
think
operate
it's a
on
good
there?
explanation. I get the visualization. I get the concept. I get the gamification, and it's right in line with where everything's going when we're looking at and talking about crypto and NFTs and DAOs and everything else. It's decentralization of everything is the future.
Completely agree. I think the only way, all these tech giants today, at one point, they were the disruptors, right? They brought
Yeah,
more value than, the previous providers were, giving to the user, and therefore they disrupted. But who's going to disrupt them? No one can foresee that. In hindsight, it'll look obvious, but I guess Web 3.0 has got the best chance of doing that, in my view.
yeah, yeah. As long as it's as long as people approach it the right way, right?
So, for example, talk to me about that. What are some of the dangers that could be approached the wrong way?
Well, exactly what's already happened, right? When we have one techno giant who comes in and gobbles up the metaverse, for example, and now most of society or the viewing population believes that this is the metaverse, this is all that it is because this group, spent a lot of money convincing people of it, not understanding that there are a lot of other things orbiting that they should have access to.
But you think that's Web 3.0, the metaverse that Facebook is building?
No, not necessarily that. I mean, but I think there's some analogies. There's some similarities to what they're doing and what I think ultimately what's gonna win.
I mean, I'm hoping the public, blockchains and the public alternatives end up winning because I have a very scary vision of, Black Mirror-esque episode of what's going to happen if Meta takes over and the society that we will have. And I think we have evidence of that going wrong. And, China just limited the use of video games by its youth, right? I
Yeah,
think in Japan, in certain Southeast Asian countries, there's been very negative effects of the absorption of people going into the virtual reality too much. And I think the metaverse is just another way of dressing that up, and it could have a negative effect on society. So I completely agree with you.
yeah, yeah. We're in agreement there for sure.
So what are some of the ways that you, for example, would use Web 3.0 or a metaverse in a positive way to get away from those dangers?
By bringing everything that we're doing the people that I associate myself with, the people that we work with together, by bringing that into the future together, right? Because it's not, I think, whatever people's focus is in this world, in the quote unquote real world, that they bring into the future technologically, that's what others are going to see. That's what others are going to be focused on. What we're focused on is abundance and empathy and gratitude and all of those things. If we can bring those human emotions, those qualities to what everybody's doing in the future, everybody wins.
That's fantastic, but that's hard, right? How can we bring? Because, for example, if you've seen have you seen The Great Hack, the Netflix documentary?
I haven't, but it's on my list.
You should watch it. But it talks about how the algorithms can sort of become perverted, not perverted, but they start overlooking those human emotions, and
Right.
they just care about getting engagement out of people, and that's led to the polarization of politics, because that's what was getting the most engagement out of people in those dangers, right?
Yeah.
So how do you bring positive human emotions into the technology that we use today? Do you believe that the tech giants of today, or the monopolies, if they wanted to, they could make changes to make their technology healthier?
Yeah, sure they could. Of course they could.
It's just not profitable to do so, so they don't do it.
Not as profitable, probably, yeah, at this point. But I think done the right way, it's more profitable. And that's what people have to wake up to.
I mean, I'm just hoping that the whole movement that we have now towards ESG, sustainability, etc., maybe ends up permeating into technology, in the technology sector itself.
It is. I mean, I think there's a different kind of social consciousness that's happening, right? People are paying attention now more than they ever have. Like, brands have to realize that when they're doing their campaigns, they have to realize that people now, if they have the choice to decide between which cola to buy, and one cola is more harmful than the other, people actually think about that now when they're spending, when they're voting with their money. And so you can't get away from it. That's, the pendulum swinging, and people are starting to wake up and think about those things.
Socially conscious consumerism, that's the way things are going, and the brands are adapting. I agree with you. I had a funny conversation today about branding for Bondex in our company, and I'm a big film buff, right? And at one point I said, I don't want Bondex to be a brand. I want it to be a symbol. And I want it to be a symbol for talent. I want it to be a symbol for financial independence, and like the democratization of talent, access to it, and access to opportunities, right? And I want it to be a symbol of that. Because basically I find that, and listen, you just told me your kind of your origin story, or when you would think that you would be at your end of your hero's journey, when you have your cave with your treasures,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there you are unfulfilled, and you need to find the next challenge to go on to, right? I feel like most people, and you probably know this better than better, you're a motivational speaker, you're an influencer, a professional influencer. Most people are stuck in careers that they don't like, right?
Yeah.
People are stuck in this rat race that doesn't make them happy, and they're going to wake up 20 years later thinking, wow, I wasted my life. And I find that COVID has actually done some good in the world, and part of that is that
100%. It's refocused.
it's refocused a lot of people. Why are we having the great resignation in America? Why are there more jobless claims than ever before? Because people had time to sit down and think, what am I doing with my life and my career?
Right.
Don't you agree? I mean, that's
Yeah,
my
absolutely. It started making people realize that the only thing more valuable than money is time. And people are so busy that they never stopped and thought about it, chasing the almighty dollar, which is important. You have to be able to support your family. Got it, get it, okay. But once you get past that, how much further do you have to go before you get to the point where you are severely outweighing and applying more credence and importance to money over time, your very limited time on this planet? And so I agree with you 100%. It gave people an opportunity to sit down long enough. I'm a big meditator. Quiet the mind and listen to the answers that are there. It gave people, although they may not have been meditating, it gave them enough time to just sit down for 5 minutes and really start reevaluating what's important in life.
Completely agree. Where do you see things headed in terms of like the future of work and how things are going to be in a post-COVID world? You know, how do you
Yeah,
think
I think
careers are going
it's
to
going to continue the way that it's already going. We're going to see more and more self-employed people. We're going to see more and more entrepreneurs. We're going to see more and more founders with startups and companies that are working remotely. And we're going to see, democratization of society in general in all industries, where people are really, maybe I think they're, in many ways, we're already starting to see it, like what you said, when, not wanting to go to work for certain reasons is one extreme example, but there's a balance where I think people are going to be willing to say, I'll do less or I'll take less because it's more important for me to be able to spend time with my child at Little League or my child at ballet than it is for me to stay at the office for 16 hours a day. That's the mentality shift that I think we're starting to see.
Completely agree with you. One of the things that I keep, and I mean, Bondex is a very distributed global, and we're kind of remote. We have an office in Miami and one in Singapore, but like as our company grows, we're having a debate about, for example, office hours, office FaceTime, and how this has changed. And I talk to friends at like amazing places like Tiger Global or Bridgewater or First Minute Capital, like top VCs and hedge funds. And they tell me that now it's 3 days a week at the office. And I'm like, whoa, 3 days a week. And I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Apparently, productivity and performance goes up when we have less days at the office.
Yeah.
But we still need a hybrid.
Yeah, well, I'll be in Miami in 2 weeks for NFT Basel, so maybe we'll get together.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, beyond that, to answer your question, I've always, when I built my firm, my law firm, there were other firms in the community, and you can apply this to any business that required FaceTime. You had to be in on a Saturday for at least 4 hours. You had to be there from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. because FaceTime was important, and it was to those firms. For me, I took the opposite approach, and it ended up working out really well for us. I don't care where somebody is. I don't care what they're doing. Are they being efficient and are they being effective? For me, it made a lot more sense for the young attorneys to sit with their laptop at Starbucks and do business because they're networking, they're sitting next to strangers who ultimately can become clients rather than sitting in their desk or sitting in a cubicle where the only people that they're talking to are the people that they're online with or on a call with. And so I think the more that we start to realize that technology has provided us with an opportunity to be somewhere where we can really optimize whatever it is that we do, and we take advantage of that, the more everybody starts to win.
All in alignment there. But do you feel that there's still certain scenarios, obviously certain times where being in an office and being in a team and it's still useful and
Yes.
we can't get rid of it completely, right?
Can't get rid of it completely. Absolutely. But if you look back, like let's zoom out all the way. Let's zoom out 100 years and start to think about, why do we have a 40-hour work week to begin with? Why? Well, because Henry Ford decided that made sense during the Industrial Revolution, and it made sense, and people would be there and they'd work long enough so that they could buy cars, and then they'd have 2 days a week to drive their cars, and that would be just enough to make them enjoy it, but go back to work and buy it. So when you stop and think about it, there's nothing logical about having the type of work schedules that we have. So when you sit down, like I have businesses that I own and companies that I'm invested in, they have different schedules. Is there a value to having a collective consciousness, sitting down with your coworkers? Absolutely. Should you do that 9 to 5, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, because we were told to do that for the last 100 years? Absolutely not. So when we sit down and we build companies, we say, what are you doing? What do you want to do? How do you intend to do it? And then let's reverse engineer that so we can figure out when you should be doing it and where you should be doing it from.
I like it. So we probably don't have all the answers now, but I'd like to ask you this, Mike. And you're in an industry. I mean, there's a lot of FaceTime client facing amongst colleagues in the legal field, right? But if you were to design your perfect work week, your perfect schedule, your perfect for your team and your company, what would that look like?
Yeah. So for that type of company, it would be 1 or 2 days a week in the office where I work with my coworkers and vice versa, meet with clients, and the rest of the week, the rest of the time, it's traveling, conducting business, generating business. Because everybody forgets the first key of having the first rule of having a successful business, and that's to generate the business. Certain things in tech, it generates itself. Okay, I get that. And that makes it a lot easier. And that's why this space is so great. But in many traditional forms of business, it doesn't matter if you're the best in the world. You could be the best lawyer, the best doctor, the best engineer, accountant, go right through it. If the phone doesn't ring, you're not going to make a living. And if you don't go out there and make it ring, you're not going to make a living. So for me, rule number one, when we hired new attorneys or we brought on new staff, it was always, how do we get you into the race? How do we get you out there so that you can start building a community, which, using that word, brings us back to NFTs, because the community is what it's all about. And everybody says, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I say, it's not that. It's who knows you. There's another step to that. And so you have to make sure that people know you, so that when something happens, if somebody's buying or selling a business, if they are going through a merger acquisition, if they get in an accident, if they get arrested, as the attorney, I wanted to be in their mind before that happened, so that when it happened, they automatically said, call Mike Mumola's office. With whatever we're doing now with technology or other things, you need to be in their head before that, whatever it might be, is developed, and you're going to start working on it. So they say, I have the guy. As soon as that hits, they're already thinking of you and your company to come back to say, we should be working with them, because I've been talking to them about this. And the only way that happens is by building that, planting those seeds in advance.
Makes sense. So you would basically build it to optimize top funnel and client acquisition, and not, not focus on face time and inefficiencies internally, which makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And then, let's talk about crypto a little bit more. The NFTs is your area of expertise, or your favorite kind of section of it, little corner of it?
Man, it's tough to say. I love crypto. I love NFTs. NFTs have been what I've been down the rabbit hole in for the last 5-6 months, crypto for the last 5-6 years. So love both of them for what they are. And to the extent I can be considered an expert, maybe, I don't know that anybody's an expert in NFTs right now. So I think I know as much as anybody else, or maybe a little more, but I don't know that any of us are experts yet.
Too early to be an expert in a subject. That's what's exciting about this technology that moves so fast, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Tell me, I've been exploring it myself, and we've been exploring it for use cases within talent and within the Bondex platform itself, right? And for example, we've been looking at proof of participation tokens and how to extract more engagement out of users. But I imagine, you're going to NFT Basel, you're probably talking about, did you hit it big with the collections that made it big? What do you think about that type of business model, etc.?
No, I mean, that's a part of it. Look, complete transparency, I collect NFTs. I do. I've gotten into it. And what's really interesting for me is I've never been a big art fan. Historically, some of my friends and coworkers are. NFTs have made me an art fan, which I think is really interesting, because I can't be the only one. I think for the art world, it's done tremendous things. But putting that aside, yes, I am a collector. Yes, I love that whole side of things. But as an attorney, that's what initially drew me in to NFTs. As soon as I was introduced to the concept, I said, wait a minute, like, stop everything, time out. You mean that there's a technology that immediately can authenticate, it's immutable, it's permanent, it's all of these things that as lawyers we've been trying to establish throughout history, because it's clunky and it's cumbersome to establish ownership, transfer, all of those things. And the same applies in banking and everything else. That this technology exists, tell me more. So yes, the collectible side is one thing, but for me, yeah, absolutely, the whole utility side, B2B, B2C, was really fascinating and pulled me in.
No, that makes complete sense, and that's what I'm excited about. I think we've just scratched the surface. I think, my personal prediction, I think 6 months from now, most of these collections people are releasing are a bit of a cash grab, and they're going to be regarded just like meme coins were, from kind of the life cycle that they had, from the new hot thing to, regarded as sort of scams. And then we're going to get into the utility, and sort of like what happened with blockchain 10 years ago. This technology was released into the world. We didn't know what to do with it. Over 10 years, it's matured. Now we're getting the hang of it. I think NFTs is that next new frontier. And for lawyers and legal documents, it makes complete sense, right? I'd love to hear more about some of the applications that you think would be really useful in the legal field.
I think number one, I think real estate, residential, commercial, industrial, like, it's going to revolutionize the way we transfer ownership rights in property. Because right now, I don't know if you invest in real estate or not. I do. And it is so clunky and antiquated that it doesn't make sense. You sit at these tables at closings, and you realize that the title agency has to literally go down to the courthouse and file with the clerk. And if you want to go research properties, thumb through 100 years worth of deed transactions. It's mind blowing the amount of human energy that's wasted on that. To think now that we can create on the blockchain, again, an immutable, permanent document or series of documents of exactly what's happened, the inspections that have taken place, the financing, the ownership, the transfers, never to be changed. That's mind blowing, and how that's going to revolutionize, I think, real estate. And you can apply it. I was talking to somebody today in the music industry. The same thing in sports. When we have entertainers and athletes who are involved in, you can see it now, it's starting to hit the news in these endorsement deals and different things that have historically been done one way. NFTs are changing that game. Now it's peer to peer. Hey, talk to me. I'm the athlete. I can deal with you directly. Or I'm the artist. I'm the singer. I don't need you, big record label. I can go right to my fan base and I can do it this way. And all of that, we can build in all of the legality into the smart contracts and into the algorithm so that people know exactly what's going to happen without human interference or error.
You know, I'm going to have a little counter argument. Let's see what you think about this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not about everything you've said, because most of what you said was right. But I was listening to a great podcast about, invest with the best regarding universal music and NFTs that, music, it was like, and I keep seeing the record labels should be terrified of NFTs. The artists can be going peer to peer, but at one point, some intermediaries bring value to the transactions, right? Not everything should be peer-to-peer and disintermediated, right? The record label provides a platform for an artist to become big because it's not just the music that they're selling. What the record label does for an artist is provide a top of the funnel, which is the music people are listening, to bring them to buy merchandise, concerts where they make most of the money, et cetera, et cetera. And if they're doing that peer-to-peer, the artist is becoming his own little company, but that's a lot to manage. Is everyone that's an artist capable of managing their own little enterprise?
Well,
It
let
makes
me
me
let me
think.
ask you, let me answer your question with a question, and it applies to crypto. Is everyone who holds crypto capable of being their own bank? Because that's what we are, right? And so I think this technology creates a high level of responsibility. So I agree with you. There have to be certain things that are done a certain way. And I also agree with you that there are certain things that, for example, a label in the music industry or a gallery in the art industry provide that perhaps that creator cannot do themselves. But just the existence of this technology itself is going to give them leverage. It's going to give them the opportunity to say, I don't necessarily need you the way I needed you 10 years ago before this technology existed. So let's figure out a way that we can both win. Because before, I know when I went to law school, I went in because I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. I wanted to represent artists. And I did for about 30 seconds. And then I decided I wasn't going to do it because there was no way to help these artists. And I saw what the labels were doing to them. And it was beyond frustrating. But there was nothing you could do. They were held as captive in these labels. And some made it on radio, some didn't, and some got paid and some didn't. And so now to see that there's a technology that gives them something to kind of use to their advantage is really exciting.
Completely agree with you. The reason for that is because when the artist has nothing, they have to give up most of their IP to this record label for a chance to be a star. But
Yeah.
from the shoes of the record label, they're looking at the person as a portfolio, right? They're going to take a chance at the capital cost on 10 artists, and one of them will be a star. And it's a ruthless industry. And I'm excited to see what kind of democratization is brought to it by NFTs and disintermediation in general. I think it's a hell of a time to be alive.
Yeah,
Now,
it is.
I'm respectful in your time. You're a big shot. We're reaching kind of the end of the interview. There's a poll we take at the end of every interview, which is, when do you think the bull market's coming to an end? What's your prediction?
Ah, I think a little later than most people think. I think we get through the holidays. It's tough to say. Mid Q1 2022.
Mid Q1 2022 is your prediction for the start of a bear market.
Yeah,
How long do you think that bear market's going to be? You think it's that long crypto winter some people are saying? You think it's going to be a short one? What are your thoughts?
through the summer.
That's it? That's a short one?
It's a short one. I think it's going to be shorter than most people think, and we can get into it in another call as to why. But I think it's going to be shorter than most people think. There are a lot of eyes and a lot of money now coming into crypto that wasn't before. A lot of people are excited. When I have my 74-year-old mother calling me saying, "What is this Bitcoin and how do I buy it?" That tells me that things are happening, right? So I think things are going to be
You know,
less less
actually,
than they've been in the past.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to retract going back, now that you've said that about your mother trying to get into Bitcoin and related to what you've told me about real estate transactions with through an NFT, what do you think it would be the rate of adoption in the main market, in the mainstream, for them to actually start buying and selling their houses on NFTs? Because that's the big question, right? The technology is now here. We can do it like this, but when is society going to adopt this? When are they going to trust the technology
As
enough?
soon as they understand it. And so that's why this is important to talk about it, to explain to people what it is. I just had a conversation last night about this on a podcast where I talked about tokenization of real estate and explaining it to a group of really sophisticated real estate investors who had no idea, because they were building out a platform, a traditional, quote unquote, old fashioned bricks and mortar type of real estate company, where they were going to, some high rises that they're investing in and giving people an opportunity to come in. And I said, you realize that there's an entire technological way to do this that cuts out about 90% of the friction that you're going to have if you do it the old fashioned way. And when I explained it to them, like, wow. So, we're still at the level where we're explaining it to people who are in the industry. It's going to take a little time to trickle out to like my mother and people around us like that. But once it does, I think once they understand it, just like my mother now is willing to buy Bitcoin, she's going to be willing to do, like, what do you mean? I can do this technologically. I can tokenize this, or I can sell this way without all of the costs and the potential for human error over here that we've seen historically. I think then they'll start to accept it.
That makes sense. We're aligned on that answer. And Mike, I invite you to become one of the first influencers slash motivational speakers on the Bondex platform once that utility is up and running. Please come check out our platform a little bit more. I really think we're the LinkedIn killer for the future of work. And I invite you to change sides or come be one of the pioneers.
Thank you for the invitation. I'll absolutely consider it, and have someone send me the information. I'd love to try and connect with you or your team while I'm down in Miami.
We'll send you some links, and we'll meet in Miami. Our offices are in Brickell, and you're welcome with open arms there.
Perfect.
Thank you
That's
for
where
your
I'll
time,
be.
Mike. Pleasure to chat with you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.